I'd been climbing for 6 months when my friend Travis Moore first told me about El Capitan in Yosemite. I'll never forget when he looked at me and he said, "Manley, did you know that there are walls so big that you can climb all day and still not make it to the top?" He said, "You have to sleep on the side of the walls for days before you ever even reach the summit." He planted a seed in my mind that day that started me on a 5-year journey. It took 7 partners and 4 cross-country trips to Yosemite before I finally summited El Cap in 1997. But looking back, I realized that with each attempt, I grew more and more sure that I could actually accomplish my goal. That first experience of conquering something I didn't know I could do at the beginning fueled me with motivation, momentum to continue climbing, and it led me to eventually climb mountains around the world in places like Nepal and Kyrgyzstan and over 300 other destinations.
Please welcome to the stage my good friend, Manley.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you. The summer of '99 found me on the edge of pursuing a 2-year dream to climb a mountain in a remote valley in Central Asia. They called it the last great frontier of big wall climbing. Sheer granite faces so tall you have to live on them for days and days and days before you reach the summit. Despite not having a partner lined up, I decided to jump on a plane in St. Louis, Missouri anyway. I drug 270 pounds of luggage halfway around the world, and it sucked. So I would love your help this time as we recreate that heroic journey, or harrowing is what I meant to say. It was horrible. But please help me with my luggage. We're going to go from St. Louis, and then from St. Louis, we're going to fly up to Detroit. From Detroit, we fly over to JFK next. By the time we leave JFK, Turkish Air has already lost all of our baggage. Thank you, Turkish Air. By the time we get to London, then we head into Istanbul next. And if you'll help me with my plane ride, the last one, after 3 full days, we finally land in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. An amazing world of culture. After 3 more days of struggle, we finally get our baggage back. And then we load it into a single Jeep, head out on a single dirt mountain road from Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan into Osh, Kyrgyzstan, from Osh, Kyrgyzstan into Uzbekistan. From Uzbekistan, we cross another border into Tajikistan, 80 miles north of Afghanistan. Unpack the Jeep, load up donkeys, and walk on foot for 2.5 days until we end up in the Aksu Valley of Kyrgyzstan, where we find amazing nomadic families and this old man sitting on a rock since Jesus walked by. The dude is old. He's still sitting there, I guarantee you, checking his Facebook feed. I really didn't get a good view of these mountains and what I had gotten myself into when I showed up, because the sun had already set. But the next morning, it was clear, like anything we might volunteer for or step up for, one day you wake up and you go, what in the world have I gotten myself into? The next morning, I got busy with the most important piece of the whole puzzle. Who was I going to climb with? 2.5 weeks goes by, I'm struggling. There's no one in this valley who's willing to climb with me. One of the Italian team, they were already focused on a first ascent and engaged in it. The last day on the calendar in which I either need to start climbing something tomorrow by myself, which is a bad idea, or climb with a partner, was there. Literally the last sunset on that day, the only sunset on the day, a Russian couple walks into the valley. I remember meeting Miss Jula. She had these crystal blue eyes and this soaring spirit about her. I remember her talking to me, and I got so excited. This is my one chance to sell myself on this team. She said in broken English, "Manley, I am here with my husband, Dima. We don't need partner." So I just turned up my Kentucky charm. Eventually, I started to break through. After over an hour, I saw Jula look up at me, and she said, "Manley, you make a good partner." I remember thinking, oh, I would. I've been lonely for 2.5 weeks. I would make a great partner. So I thought I better check and see what her husband thinks about this. So I looked over at Mr. Dima. Yeah, you see how excited he was. That's his big grin, by the way. He was super psyched to have me as a partner. He interrupts the silence of he's standing over me, that stoic Russian, kind of like maybe a Rocky V character, you know. He finally breaks the silence and he says, "Manley, you skinny." I was kind of shocked. I defended myself. I said, "Yeah, but I'm light. I climb well." He said, "Manley, let's climb." I thought, oh, I got the job. I need to shut up. We start packing, going through our resources, as you've always done. And when you have that big project, whatever it is in your life, there's always a moment when you say, okay, for this to happen, for this to go live, what do we need and what can we do without? What do we have to have right now for this to happen? But in our case, we're making decisions like, can I leave this behind, make it to the summit, and back and survive? We make these critical decisions, and finally, after midnight, we crawl into the tent. Before I knew it, the sun had risen in this beautiful valley. And if you can imagine, to my left, we're walking down this valley. There's a roaring whitewater river. 100 yards ahead of me on the trail is Mrs. Jula. 10 yards in front of me is Dima. He was yelling all this Russian at me, and I don't remember but 2 words of Russian. Maybe you're familiar with these from movies or whatever experience you've had with Russian in your life. Dima's looking back at me. He keeps pointing at the wall we had picked out to climb. He says, Manley, da. What does da mean? Yes, exactly. And then he'd point and he'd say a bunch of Russian. They say, niet. Niet means no, exactly. He keeps on, Manley, da, niet, da. And then he gets this one point, da. He freezes in time. I'm sitting here, standing and watching him, and I said, what in the world is he doing? I couldn't figure it out. And then I realized that he starts to fall backwards, that his head is going to crash into these rocks in front of me. So I dive out, cradle his head to the ground. Jula! She runs back. I get my coat off as quick as I can because he's wrenching in a grand mal seizure. We get him on his side. I cover him. I check his pulse. I'm freaking out. I said, Jula, we're 3 days from a third world hospital. We gotta get Dima some help. She says, Manley, Dima's fine. Really? I remember thinking, honey, I don't know exactly where you're from in Russia, but where I come from, this is a problem. We got to get him some help. We got to get him out of here. And I said, Jula, what are we going to do? She said, Manley, Dima has 1 seizure, 1 year. He have no more seizure for 1 year, probably. You speak Russian too, Bob. I said, probably? What? She said, Manley, no problem. I wanted to believe her. One voice in my head said, this is your dream, dude. Trust her. This is his wife. She knows his health condition. The other voice just said, run. I started to trust her. I wanted to believe, but then I really started freaking out because guess who was going to hold my rope? Yeah, it's funny now. Of all the lessons I share with audiences, this is the one I want you to walk out of here with. We all need this. To climb mountains, whether it's real mountains I've climbed or the day-to-day mountains I grind through in my life, it's all about whoever has the rope in their hands for you. We need to be a belay, B-E-L-A-Y. That's what we call the person that holds that rope for us. To be a good belayer, you just need to do a few things well. 4 specifically. Number 1, we need to show up presently and encourage and say, I got you. Go. I got your back. Step up. I know this is uncomfortable. I got you. Number 2, we need to make sure we don't give people too much slack. I used to do this all the time in the business world because it was comfortable for me. I would put off the uncomfortable conversation. We do this in the climbing world. When you give out too much slack, we know we're going to fall. The question then becomes, well, what will we do when we fall? If we have too much slack out and you fall climbing, you're going to go too far. Almost as critical is the 3rd point, and that is to make sure we don't hold the rope too tight, also known as micromanaging. When the rope's too tight, you can't move. And 4th, and most critical of all, is we have to know without a shadow of a doubt in our mind that when we step up in our life and stretch, that someone's got the rope in their hands, and that when we fall, someone is going to block the rope off so that we can get back on the wall and get climbing again as quickly as possible. So how can you use this in your life? Some of you are probably saying, I'll probably never climb mountains, Manley. That's why I want to make sure that this framework is crystal clear in your mind so you know exactly what to do with it when you walk out of here. It's 2 simple steps. The first one is a question. Every single day I invite you to ask this question. Who do I need on belay today? See, what I've noticed about people like you who are in the very business of serving and supporting others is that often you don't build the support that you need to do what you need to do and to be your best every day. You're so busy taking care of everyone else. It's like getting the oxygen mask on first, right? So what I would encourage you to do is every day to wake up and ask yourself, who do I need on belay today? And I want to invite you to do that right now. Grab the little postcard you have in front of you. Flip it over on the back. Without overthinking it, first person hits your heart or your gut, just write down their name. Who's that person that you need on belay? Maybe it's a mentor. Maybe it's an old boss. Could be a competitor. Could be boss's boss. Don't let vertical and horizontal boundaries get in the way of who that person is. Write that person down. Next step is simple, and it's the simplest of the two steps. It's the one I fall down on the most, actually, is to get on belay. What does that mean? It means to make a meaningful, intentional connection. Hopefully it's in person. Could be via a phone call or video. Maybe they're across the country. So I have the excuse that I don't have enough time to reach out to my dad every day. He's 83. I've already lost my mother. You would think I would know better. How long does it take to send a quick message? Don't overthink it either. Thinking of you. 3 words. I appreciate you. By the way, that's a great way to do it. Because I get a lot of questions. People say, well, Manley, if this person's a mentor and someone who lifts me up, how do I get on belay for them? How can I possibly support someone who's done so much for me? I'm going to demonstrate a great way to do that, and it's just simply acknowledge them and let them know. That may be having their day. Judson and I were talking about that last night. What if they're the person having the day, and then it's sucking, even though the person you look up to, or they've helped you, maybe they're in the grind, and maybe that little message will lift them up. So I want to do a quick acknowledge. Here's an example. Get on belay, and these are people who I truly am grateful, or I wouldn't be in front of you today. Number one, Miss Angela and Amy for trusting me and putting me in front of you. Secondly, on belay in the back there for me, since I got here yesterday, Greg and Thaddeus on the AV team have been rocking it. And then our banquet team's already working on a great lunch for us. And we forget about all this, right? All these people behind the scenes to make it happen. And then third, I want to thank you for showing up and being present, and for your boss to let you be here. Or maybe they're sitting next to you. Acknowledge, great way to do it. So let's do it. One thing I've noticed about my keynotes is put it into action, takes it to a whole other level. So very quickly, we're going to put this into action. Now, there's a simple 2 rules I need you to follow for this to work. Number 1 is I'm going to ask you to grab your phone and text, but I want you to put exactly what I have on the screen and then put it back down, because the person's going to want to have a conversation, and that's exactly what I want. So I need you to pause and have that conversation after we're all done today, if you would be willing to play along. Cool. Here's the message. Belay on. I'll explain later. Text that. You have 30 seconds to do it, and then I'm going to wrap it up. All right, time's up. Please put your phone back down. I know if you're willing to be intentional and make these meaningful connections every day, it could make all the difference in the world. And whatever's next for you being either a miserable struggle or a massive success. This is just the beginning of the story. You will not believe what happens next. At Build-A-Bear, Get on Belay is one of 9 vertical lessons that we leverage to create a high engagement, massive growth culture. I am grateful to be with you, and I appreciate you being here. I look forward to connecting with every one of you. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Manley!
Thanks, brother.
And if you didn't recognize